Okay, so today we have Paul Roberts with us. Thanks for coming in, bro. Appreciate it.
Just a little bit so I can see your beautiful face.
So we usually start every episode just having you give us a quick autobiography, childhood, upbringing, family life, that type of thing.
Nice. Man, I guess I start at the beginning. Is that better?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
One of the things I joke about is whenever I kind of mess up in life, I've got 3 excuses. One of them is I'm adopted. Second one is I'm an only child. And the third one is I'm left-handed.
Yeah.
So whenever I mess up, I'm like, oh, it's got to be one of those 3 that contribute to me dropping the ball or fucking up, you know. But my childhood was great. You know, I actually work for the city that I grew up in, which is pretty awesome. It's good and bad for sure, but I've been a part of that like community ever since I was born. I was adopted by 2 amazing people. My parents were absolutely great. Definitely not perfect. Like no one's perfect. My parents weren't perfect, but damn, they did everything they possibly could. And was from, grew up in West Jordan, Utah, you know, we were on the border of like West Jordan and Kearns. And those of us that know kind of West Jordan Kearns know that like in the valley, it's not the most prestigious area. You know, there's no hard streets of Salt Lake City, but definitely like lower to middle to lower class, you know. And growing up, I was super fortunate to like find things that occupied a lot of my time. And I look back and now that I'm older, you know, I have the opportunity and the retrospect to like look at my peers, you know, and I was like, what was the difference? You know, because a lot of the kids I grew up with went down some really, really negative roads. And one of the things I can say in hindsight that like kept me out of those net negative paths was sports. You know, I got involved in karate, like legit, like Japanese style karate when I was really young. I think I started that when I was like 7 or something. I think it was because of the Ninja Turtles, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You know, I wanted to be Michelangelo or something. But got involved in karate when I was young, and there's been a consistent pattern throughout my whole life is like whatever I get into, I go pretty deep and kind of run the course, and did that, and it kept me occupied, and I ended up doing that until I got my black belt in it's called Wataru, which is just a style of Japanese karate. I was actually really ashamed of karate back in the day. It was just like goofy, you know, and I like kept it a secret, but I'll tell you what, it gave me like an outlet, you know, and like we did tournaments, and it was, I mean, back, you know, late 80s, early 90s, karate was pretty legit. And that style was, it was fighting. Like in tournaments, it wasn't like play dancing karate. It was like legit Japanese style, pretty hard style of karate, where I remember watching the black belts fight, the adult black belts, and those guys were just completely bloody. I mean, I watched one lady, a female black belt, in a tournament kick another one in the face, broke her tooth off in her foot, and they kept fighting. I was just like, damn, this is crazy. So anyway, it just kind of laid this foundation of like honor and discipline, and then being established to like Japanese culture when I was young was actually, now that I'm old enough, I really appreciate it. You know, back then I was like ashamed to be involved with karate. But now I really dig it, and I see how it's like influenced my whole life. So, got my black belt in karate, and then I was done with it as a teenager, and it wasn't cool, you know. Another thing that happened that was like super pivotal, that it's not like I forget this because it like really shaped my perspective on life is, when I was a brown belt, I had tested twice for my black belt, and I didn't get it. And I was like done with it. I wanted to quit. And my dad, it was, I mean, again, in retrospect, it was super awesome. He sat me down and he laid out how much time that I've spent kind of pursuing the goal was the black belt, right? So like he laid it out on paper. I'll never forget this. And he showed how much time I invested, which I think it was like 6 years or 7 years or 8 years. I can't even remember the details, but he put it on a graph, and he's
Half
like,
your life at the time.
yeah, exactly. So much of my time and energy went pursuing this black belt, and I hadn't been able to get it, and I was like done with karate and wanted to move on and wanted to give up. And he's like just laid it out on paper for me and showed you have another opportunity to test. Like at the time you could test every like 6 months for your black. And he's like, if you just stick it out another 6 and you like focus for 6 months and you get your goal, then that was the goal, like get the goal and then move on. And I was like, oh, I can't argue that now. It's clear. It's in front of me. So ended up doing that, getting my black belt. I went to like classes for like 2 weeks after that. And I was like, yeah, I'm done. But it was awesome. It was like really impactful in my life and my perspective on like attaining goals. So that was awesome. But after karate, I got involved in hockey, and then the same thing. I just was consumed with hockey. It literally from when I was like 13, when I started playing hockey a little bit before I stopped karate. But anyway, from like about 13 till I was like 22, literally all I did was go to school and play hockey. And I absolutely loved it. Fell in love with the sport. Had a lot of success in this sport, but didn't quite grow into my role as a hockey player. You know, I'm not big enough to like take it to the next level. And I also, when it got time to take it really seriously, I was burnt out on the sport too, because like that's all I did. From 13 till 20, you know, I was like on 4 teams at a time, 2 like roller hockey teams and then 2 ice hockey teams, and was able to like get pretty competitive with it, which was also allowed me in access to see what's needed to be like competitive at a high level, you know, which I really appreciate also now as a grown up. Back then, you know, as a kid, I was just like doing the thing because I loved it. But yeah, and then after hockey, my buddy that I played hockey with, we got done playing junior hockey, and he actually started training with an MMA coach, and he's the one. His name is Barton Burdett. He hit me up. He's like, "We should go train MMA," and I was like, "Nah, I'm not interested really." And then he convinced me to go do it, and then I fell in love with that, you know, and that consumed me. And I ran that for a long time. I did the whole MMA kind of pursuing thing, and that's actually what I wanted to do, you know, in my 20s and early 30s, like I was in my head, I was a fighter. But the reality is like that's a rough, if you're trying to pursue that as a career, that's a pretty rough career and very, very selfish career to pursue. But like that's all growing up, and that's like one of the things that I really appreciate now being older, the things that like kept me busy. And that's one of the things that I've tried to hold on to and instill on my kids is like just keep them busy doing hard things. I think that for like the mentality of developing whatever the term is that we want to call it, you know, either resilience or grit or whatever tag word you want to throw in there. Just the ability to do hard things and stay at it is a skill. And I think it needs to be trained just like anything. And I've tried to do that in my kids, and it's been great. But I mean, that's my personal kind of upbringing, is it was heavy in just kind of sport and athletics. And Everything else was kind of, you know, I'm old enough to like look back to, and one of the things I've realized, because I mean I always knew I was adopted, you know, and I was like like yearned for like brotherhood, you know. I was like wanted brothers, because it was just like I honestly like felt that I owed like my parents a lot, like for taking me in, and I just feel like I I know now that like when people are around me, like I'm extremely loyal, and I think it's part of the reason, or one of the reasons that contributes to that kind of mentality, is like feeling like when people like accept me, I'm like, all right, I'm yours, you're mine. Like let's run this thing. So it's been great. It's been awesome. I'm running off on tangents. I'm so sorry.
No,
This is going to be a crazy conversation.
Place for it.
How old were you when you were adopted?
I was a baby. Yeah.
So do you know your biological parents?
Nope. No, there's a line for me to find them if I ever needed to, but I've never felt the need.
Yeah.
You know, my parents that adopted me are my parents. Like I don't have any like desire to find my biological parents. The only reason that when I get older and we talk about like longevity and like understanding family history, that's like the only line that I'm like, oh, it's actually maybe valuable to understand that kind of stuff. And then I've had that like quite a few years ago, you know, my amazing wife and people around me were like, I wonder what your heritage is, you know. And I was like, I don't care. But then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, I kind of do wonder what my heritage is.
Yeah.
So I did the whole like DNA testing thing that gave me back my heritage, and it didn't really change anything other than what most Utahns are, like typical like European descent. I don't even know it off the top of my head, you know. It doesn't matter to me necessarily, but yeah, I was never driven to find my biological parents. My parents are my parents. You know, they're amazing. They're amazing people. But yeah.
So did you have a family at this point once you started fighting?
So yeah, that was it was kind of a pivotal point in my life. You know, the 30s generally are. So I was like late 20s when I started, and when I started kind of training the whole MMA thing, I didn't have any intention of fighting. It just kind of gravitated that way. You know, it's like when you start doing something long enough, you're like, oh, okay, I kind of want to test this thing, or that was my mentality. I don't know if that's everyone's mentality, but I was like, okay, I've been training long enough that I want to kind of see what I can do. And I ended up taking some local fights and did really well. And I was training a lot. I was at the MMA gym. I mean, at least 4 nights a week for like 3 hours a night, you know. And I did like my wife Jessica. It's our story's wild. I mean, we started dating in high school. We're like high school sweethearts, which is crazy. It's one of the things that I was actually joking with my son the other day. I'm like, all right, like just take your time. I know like me and your mom are not good examples of taking your time, developing relationships and developing who you are as a person. But understand, like, we are not the standard. Like, people that get involved in high school, most of those people are not still together, you know. And me and my wife are very lucky that we both are different people now, you know, as like full-blown adults, but we're still very, very compatible, you know, and that's just not the standard, you know. But we actually started dating in high school. She went to school down at SUU for a couple years. Meanwhile, I was playing hockey, and we maintained a relationship. And when she got done with school and I got done playing hockey, we got very, very serious, and we were all kind of, you know, exclusive through that time. And it progressed and got to the point where it's like, oh, we've been together for a long time. It's like, well, might as well get married, do the thing. And So yeah, when I was training to fight, I had a wife. My son, when I was like in that kind of pivotal time in my life where I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, he was already born. He was a baby, he was a toddler, and that was actually getting back to one of the things I said with the whole pursuing MMA. It was like very selfish of me. You know, it was like, what am I doing? I'm like spending so much time and energy training. I'm away from my wife. I'm away from my newborn child. And for what? Like, even if I make it, like at the time back then, unless you were that top 1%, you know, making it meant getting like $5,000 a night, you know, for a fight. And that's like in the UFC, like that's the big promotion. You might get 5 to show and then 5 to win. And I was like, and the amount of training it takes to do that, I was like, that's just irresponsible, you know. I actually had to learn that the hard way, though. This is a kind of interesting story. So I had been training a lot, and I had I had success locally in smaller promotions. I like to say that I retired undefeated, it was just 3 fights, but it went really well. I got like 1 knockout in like 30 seconds and then 2 submissions. One of them was like really quick in the first, and then the other submission was like beginning of the second round. So had a lot of success locally. And I was definitely not young for the sport. I was older and I had a family, and I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this thing, I got to like figure out how to get myself to the top as fast as possible, because I don't have the time to spend in local little promotions, you know, building up 30, 40, 50 fights before I make it to a high level competitive promotion like the UFC. And at that time, the Ultimate Fighter was like kind of just getting momentum, you know. I ended up trying out for that show twice. And I think the first one might have been like the Ultimate Fighter, maybe 3 or 5 or something. It was really early on. And I've been training with people that had made it, and I was in kind of that realm, right? And the first tryout went really well. I made it through all the cuts. I had an interview. I just didn't get selected to be on the show. And in hindsight, I was like, damn it, dude, I missed my opportunity. I should have said I was Mormon. If I said I was Mormon, man, they would put me on that show. And they told me, are like, we're just like, at this point, we're looking for personality types. You know, it was a reality TV show. In hindsight, I'm so glad that that didn't happen, you know, but that was where my head was at. I was like, okay, how can I do this as fast as possible? Is get on that show. So the first one went really well, just didn't get selected. I was like, okay, damn, man, I feel like I got almost what it takes, you know, so it built me some confidence. And then kept training, kept doing the thing, and then the next one rolled around. And I went to that tryout, and that one did not go well. That one, I have this kind of, depending on the environment, it can be a really good kind of mindset and a very positive thing. But typically when things get kind of intense, I have a pretty decent ability to just kind of be composed, you know? And especially if I've been there before, you know, especially if I'm a little familiar with it. And in the second tryout, I got there early, you know, I did the whole thing. Like, and this is our culture. We show up early, you know, if you're not early, you're late, that kind of environment. And so I was like one of the first to like come down to get, you'd get numbers, right? You'd get a number and then they would separate you in groups of like 30 dudes, and they would do like a grappling cut. And then if you made it through the grappling cut, they'd do a striking cut. And then they would kind of figure out from there, and then they would invite you for like interviews and stuff. And the second tryout, I was like 3rd or 4th in line to get my number. You know, I got there early into the venue. And so I was in the first group that went to the grappling cuts. And literally how they do that is, or I don't know how they do it anymore, but back then they would like call 2 numbers up, be like, okay, 6 and 24 or whatever. And they just have you come up and you would do a round, and then they would, they would either cut one of you, cut both of you. They just look at how you could, what your ability was, right? So I literally, we get up separated in our groups. We come out, and I was the very first one to get called up, right? And right before that, Dana White was there, and Joe Silva back in the day, and they get up. Dana gets up, and he's like, "Yeah, we just, we're not trying to see anyone get hurt. We don't want to see any hill hooks, anything crazy. We just want to see how you guys roll. So imagine like you're rolling with your buddy, but show us what you can do." And I was like, hook, line, and sinker. I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be great. I'm just gonna come out here and like, be like almost a flow roll or whatever." And man, the dude I went against, he was really good, and he got me on the defensive really quick, and he grabbed, and we were playing the leg game. And this was a long time ago too, before, and it's now evolved to a crazy level. But anyway, we're playing the leg game. He grabs my heel and just rips it, and I feel shit pop, and he felt it too. And he was amped, right? And I was not. I was just like, slap, bump, yeah, let's do the thing. And he throttled me. And he grabs my heel and rips it and pops my knee up, and he could feel it. And he's like, "Oh," he's like, "Sorry." And I'm like, "Fuck, dude, let's just keep trying to roll." And I just was rolling. My leg was like floppy the whole time. I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, got cut, right? So I got cut. My leg's all jacked up. I'm like, dude, something's wrong, This is not like we talk about how you either like, are you hurt or injured? Hurt, you can do some shit. This was like, oh I'm injured. Like, this is not good. And I like wrap it. I try to ice it. I'm like sitting in the hotel room by myself in Chicago, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? Dude, my wife and my kid are at home. I'm like pursuing this for what, and that was like a really pivotal point in my life. And I'm like, all right, I got to figure out what I want to actually do as a full-blown adult, And then came fire, and that's how I kind of gravitated towards fire.
Yeah. What brought you, what drew you to the fire service? Is that something you had intentions in beforehand? Or?
And kind of back to training and fighting, I was like, okay, I because I was involved with the city, I started working for the city when I was literally 16 years old. Working summers through high school as like a parks, maintenance worker. And then even through my senior year of high school, I started like work release, and I worked part-time for the parks department, and then went to school. And then after I graduated high school, I just immediately clicked over to full-time in the parks department. And kind of crazy turn of events. I was in the parks department. I worked there for like 4 years, and this is all while I was training MMA, right? And I was doing the parks department thing, and then there was an opportunity to promote or take this new job as the cemetery sexton, which is a crazy term, but is like at the city that I work for. We have 2 cemeteries, and the cemetery sexton's like the groundskeeper, like sets up opening and closing and operates equipment, and like is responsible for the grounds and just the whole kind of cemeteries in general, right? So that kind of opened up, and I applied for it and ended up getting that job, which is wild as like a 20-year-old, happy-go-lucky. Like, I remember the first time, after I got the job, I met like a family early on that had just suffered a loss, and they're coming to the cemetery to arrange opening and closing. And I'm like, "Hey, my name's Paul. How you doing?" And they're like,
"How am I doing?"
"Not good, dude. Like, what the hell?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." So anyway, it was a crazy turn of events, and I got this cemetery sexton job, and and it was so funny because there's overlap, because when I was fighting here locally, one of the promotions was like, what's your nickname? And I was like, I don't have a nickname, and I don't want a nickname. My name's Paul. And they're like, well, if you don't have a nickname, we'll give you one. And I'm like, shit, dude. So I came up with Gravedigger. You know? So I just leaned into it. And I ended up having like a mouthpiece that said Gravedigger. It was a thing. But back to what kind of lined me up with fire is I had all this city experience. I'd been working for the city for 10 years, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, you know, and I was kind of taking some credit hours here and there. I was going to Slick, doing the whole thing, trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do? And I was at this, it was like a crossroads, because I only wanted to fight. Like that was literally, in my head, I was like, that's all I want to do. I absolutely loved it. But I was like, that's just irresponsible. I can't make money. I'm just going to like destroy my body. And then I had that epiphany where I was like, okay, this is stupid. I gotta get my shit together. And while I was kind of making that transition, there was a time frame where I was like, okay, what can I do that would allow me some more time to train? And that was where like all these kind of paths cross with fire. Is like, oh, the fire department is like awesome. I love, like, I didn't know the fire service back then. I just kind of had seen it from the periphery, right? Like I didn't have any family members that were firefighters or anything like that. I just knew that, like, one of the times when in the city, when I first actually started in the parks department, we were in the basement of one of the fire stations. And I remember seeing those guys like just going out and playing basketball. And I was just like, dang, this is like a cool gig, you know? And then the more I learned, it's just like, oh man, I love the idea of the fire service. And I was drawn, and in hindsight too, I can actually point, like, I've always been like a moth to the flame of intensity. You know, it's just like, I've always kind of drove like, oh, if it's intense, I kind of want to be a thing. I want to be a part of it. Right. Whether it was hockey or MMA, and like this whole firefighting thing too, is just like, oh man, I actually really am drawn to this. But I didn't really click in until one day, I had to open up at the time, the department I work for, we were doing our fitness, we call it a WPA, but it's just like our annual fitness test, like a CPAP or something. And we were doing that, or the department was doing that, and I had to unlock the gate for them to the rodeo grounds, because it was kind of in the rodeo grounds. So I unlocked the gate, and then the battalion chief, at the time, he was a training captain. He was like setting it up. He's like, hey, you want to run through this? And I was like, yeah, I do want to run through that. And so he like ran me through it. And then that was literally the time that I was like, oh man, like this is cool. And this would be awesome. Like, this would be an awesome career path. And then I started looking at it like, okay, everything in the fire service that I know of, I was kind of like, oh, it's interesting. Right. Where in where I was at, it was just like, you know, cemetery sexton, you know, I was like getting certifications in, you know, being a certified flagger, you know, which is not the funnest certification to carry, or a pesticide applicator's license, you know, through the state. And I'm just like, that definitely was like pulling teeth. Right. And I had no interest in that stuff, but I was doing it because I just kind of fell into it. But it wasn't until I did that physical test, I was like, dang, this is like a reality, you know, and this is cool. And so that started the idea. And then as I was kind of tailoring out of the MMA stuff, I started ramping up I got my EMT and started pursuing the fire service. And then it originally was like, I wanted the schedule so I could train more and fight more. And then the more I got into it, it just kind of took over. It kind of just took over my life and my honestly, you know, and I know we probably could share a lot of this, is like there's a big identity shift for me. And I was like, oh man, this is cool. Like I can have a lot of honor, and like I want to be a firefighter, you know? That's it. And it was like everything worked. And I remember going through getting my EMT. There was a crossroads where I was like, dang, this is, you know, a lot of time and money for me at that point in my life. And I'm like, well, at that time, getting hired was like, it was super competitive. And I'm like, well, what if I don't get hired? And I'm like, well, even if I don't get hired, having your EMT, having emergency medical kind of training it's a very positive thing. And it's like, I'm not going to get a certification in spreadsheets, you know, that's not applicable in the rest of my life. Is like, again, I had a child, and like I was like, oh man, this is like good information to know. Like, yeah. So I was like, even if I don't get hired, I can justify and I can get behind the time and the investment in time and money to pursue it. And then got my EMT, and then signed up for, at the time, like UFRA had one of the best kind of reputations for their academies, and kind of went that path. And also wanted to, like, I had some schooling that was just out here in the like ether, you know. I had like an associate's from Slick, just in random classes, just general studies, just because I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was like, oh, I can get like an associate's in emergency services and get my certs through UFRA. And that's kind of where I gravitated and went. And it was awesome. You know, it was really cool. I love the idea, and it like I said, it kind of took over as my identity. As like, oh man, I want to be a firefighter, you know?
Mm-hmm. What year was this that you got hired?
2012. 2011 or 12.
And you were in your 30s at this point?
Dude, I'll have to fucking do the math, man. Yeah, I was like late 20s.
Late 20s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that like, getting hired and being the new guy after having that much life experience prior? Like kind of having to play that game of being the new guy and...
Yeah, I actually really liked it. I kind of dig that whole mentality.
Like a rite of passage.
Yeah, totally. It's something that a lot of the stuff, a lot of the things that I've been interested in my life, you've kind of had to earn, you know, and then and there's all these kind of these life lessons that when you get old enough, you understand, oh, I'm kind of the person I am because of all these little things that happened, right? But whether it was like, honestly, when I even was a kid in our neighborhood, like you kind of had to earn your right to be a friend, you know what I mean? And like, again, it's not like we were hard streets of Salt Lake City, but there was definitely some conflict that had happened, and like that was happening in our neighborhoods and stuff. And like, I loved the idea of like earning my spot, mm-hmm. you know, and like, I really appreciated that. And whether it was a friend group or in hockey, you know, I like was familiar with being kind of earning your spot. You know, hockey historically it pretty much shaped who I am today is through a lot of hockey, because it was like very in my formative years, you know. But there's a lot of that kind of earn your spot mentality in hockey programs and hockey teams. And I really appreciate it because I know where it's kind of coming from. I know the root of it, you know, and it's just like one of those things. And I've actually even held on to it in, you know, now we have a gym, you know, that you're a part of, Shane. And we're kind of the opposite of most gyms. Is like, it's not like, oh yeah, come try it out for a drop in. It's just like, no, if you want to be here, you commit. You're here for 3 months. And then you figure out, it's like, is this the environment for me or not? It's like, I like that, like earning your spot. So when I was a new guy, even that I wasn't like super young, Absolutely loved it. You know, I ate it up. I loved being that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Nick can attest to this. And that's why I joined the fire service, is because I love the idea of proving yourself. And in the Marines, like, you have to prove yourself. Dudes have to know that they can trust you. You know, you have to earn your spot. And in the fire service, I look at it the same way. Is like, you're here, you're potentially gonna have to do some crazy shit for your homies, and they have to know that they can trust you in that spot. And vice versa, I have to know that I can have to trust you in that spot.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my mentors, Chris Maxfield, who's is an amazing dude. He told me once, is like, and I know, like, doing the towels seems trivial, right? And like your responsibility to like do the laundry as a new guy, like make sure you're the guy that's getting the towels and doing the towels. I know that seems trivial, but it's like one of the things he said is, if we can't trust you to do the towels, how can we trust you if and when like shit hits the fan, right? Which is awesome. I love that. You know, I love that whole mentality of, it's those little things that it does seem, you know, there's, you know, for people that maybe are from the periphery that don't understand it, it does look trivial. And it's like, why are you making the new guy do the towels and do the dishes and be the first one up? It's just like, but if you're in it and you understand it and you appreciate it, like, you want that, right? I wanted that. I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to show that I could be trusted. Mm-hmm. So I love it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I dig it.
What are your thoughts on new guys and sitting in the recliner?
Oh, dude, good question. Good question. It's one of those, what I don't like is games.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like the games. Like, I don't like even like the senior dudes playing games with new guys and be like, you know, they'll invite them in and sit on the recliners and then talk shit on them later. It's just like, don't play the game, you know. But I didn't sit in a recliner for my first year.
Yeah,
nor
did I.
And even if they told me to sit in the recliner, I was like, no, I'm not going to. And it's probably, and again, these things, when you talk about them in this setting, it's so weird.
It seems ridiculous.
It does seem ridiculous, but it's just like a respect thing too. It's just like, no, I want to do my thing. I want to earn my spot to like sit in the recliner. For the record, we all sit in the recliners way too fucking much, by the way. Like,
yeah,
I have this thing, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but it's like, we all have like these back issues that we deal with. But I think more than the big culprit is probably sitting in those recliners, not when we move the heavy patient on scene. That's like the straw that breaks the back. But the problem lies with bad posture, sitting in these recliners and then expecting to use our backs when we need to. So that's a little bit of tangent, little soapbox thing. But yeah, I love that you brought that up because it is a funny thing. I don't like the games. So and I wouldn't necessarily, depending on the guy, like, I probably wouldn't be like, oh, he sat in the recliner, you know. I was like, if let's say, I can't believe we're talking about this. So funny. But let's say, like, at the end of the, you know, it's like 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock. We're like, all right, let's be a part of the crew. We're going to put on a show or something. And they invite him over. It's like, I wouldn't look at that guy negatively if he got invited over to sit in the recliner and watch a show, because there's aspects of that I love too, is like the camaraderie that happens with that. Is like, it does feel weird, like hanging out watching Shoresy or something, and you got a dude just sitting on the table, you know, or training, and they're like falling asleep at the table. It's just, I don't know. It really is. The context of the specific scenario, I think, matters. But back to, I didn't sit in the recliner for my year.
Nor did I. I have mixed feelings about it. I think it's like we have said already. I like the idea of earning your spot and proving yourself, but I also like the new guy is just as much a part of the crew as everybody else.
Yeah,
and he's supposed to be a teammate. He's supposed to be part of the family, the brotherhood, camaraderie. Like, and if we're on a call and, like you said, shit hits the fan, we're expecting him to be a part of the team and hold his weight. But yet when we're chilling at the station, he's not a part of the team enough
Yeah.
to sit in the recliner with us. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it.
I know.
Yeah, I do too. Like, it kind of drives me nuts sometimes. And I think a big part of it is like it's this weird gray area because it's like you said, like the games. I don't like the games, and that kind of falls in the game category for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like, man, and this is where it's hard for me as far as like the gray area is concerned because you get guys that want to play the games because it makes them feel cool. You know what I mean? Like, because it adds to their identity of I'm this badass masculine fireman, and you're just like, dude, no one gives a shit, first of all. Yeah. But like, I think back to like being a boot in the Marine Corps. I was very fortunate in the unit I ended up in 2-5. We had guys that came over from 3-5, fresh back from Sangin, which is a real famous deployment during operation during freedom in Afghanistan. They took the most casualties in a single unit since Vietnam. Like they went through some shit. Yeah, they went through some shit. And so we had a lot of guys that came over there. A lot of them volunteered to come to our unit because they were like, "Oh, they're going back. We're going over there." Like they weren't. A lot of them weren't told. They volunteered to go back. But then we had guys that were part of 2-5, and they got the deployment they got back from was not combat. So we had seniors that had combat experience, and we had seniors that did not. Those who did not liked playing the fuck games, you know what I mean?
Totally.
But the guys who were like, no, I'm here to teach you the job so we can depend on one another when shit hits the fan. But then when you fuck up, I will fuck your world up. And that was like, I had way more respect for those guys than the guys over here that were like, I got a little seniority now, and now I'm going to like take it out on some new guy because that's what was done to me. Therefore it's going to be done to you. And like that shit drives me crazy because like you said, we probably spend too much time in the recliners. And if you're going to be a good example for that new guy, like get up, train the guy, like teach him something, like show him what you expect from them. Show him what you expect him to be years from now in that position. And
be the person that you expect him to be.
Yeah. But it is weird because you get a lot of guys that they want to be the drill instructor. They just want to yell at someone. They want to feel cool. They want to prove themselves by puffing out their chest a little bit. And you just kind of go, dude, like you're not helping the culture here. And it's kind of holding us back, and it's doing a detriment to like, because the job itself is evolving faster than most of us can keep up with, and you're just back here like the only job is fighting house fires, and it's like, oof, there's so much more to this nowadays.
Yeah, it's an interesting world, and I think one of the things that came to mind when you're talking about it right there is like, I think all of us are looking for validation. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like some of those guys that may, and it's the fire service, especially here locally, is an interesting one. And I mean, we're firefighters by trade, and we're in the fire service, and you know our job is, most of us got involved in that industry to like fight fire. Like that's what attracted me. It wasn't necessarily, you know, medical calls, public assists, you know, I was like, oh, and that's, in hindsight, it's like, oh, that's the majority of the job, you know, large majority of the job. And the people that maybe have not had like an avenue to like that validation, whatever that is, you know, whether it's like actual seeing some real shit or like being on a lot of fires or whatever, is like, I think they need something, you know, and then their avenue might be to like puff their chest up, you know, in the station, which is weird. But it's like that's what they're kind of doing. We're all searching for that, you know. And some people have had different avenues where they've seen real stuff, you know. And you know, there's a lot of people in the military too. From my very somewhat removed, I've been fortunate to work with a lot of the military and kind of the strength and conditioning world. So I've like got this perspective on it. It's definitely from the periphery, but there is like if you haven't seen action, you know, and like that's like what you signed up for, and you don't get it leads to some really interesting kind of perspective, right? And I think that's what happens in the fire service too, is like I signed up to like fight fire, but like honestly is just like, man, I've had probably 10 in my career, like really good working fires, you know what I mean? And it's just like, that's what I signed up to do. That's what I'm here for. That's my validation. And when I don't get it, I'm left like searching for something to like get validation with, you know?
Yeah.
So it becomes it's an interesting world, you know? And I think also that leads to a lot of people being, you know, disgruntled or depressed because it's just like, oh, I signed up to do X, but I'm not doing that, you know? So it messes with us mentally, I think. And then it's like, well, what can I get? Yeah. Can I just talk shit on the new guy? Because, you know, I don't, it's just a weird world for sure.
Yeah. But it's like you're in this job, but it's just like just out of reach. And so you need to like belittle someone almost to make yourself feel better. It's a very weird dynamic.
Especially because like you throw in, I'm hesitant to say this, but it is the reality. Like, the fire service has a bit of a frat house mentality. And I think that's because you live in a house with those guys for 48 hours, you know, and it can be kind of childish sometimes, but that's like if you look at like, I was never in a frat in college, but
yeah,
you know, like if you look at any other movie or show that depicts that, it's like that's some dumb shit, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like we should be adult, like we're supposed to be professionals, like let's raise that bar, you know, like let's be professionals. And but it is this weird gray area because it's like, well, a lot of the times the job is like a lot of like fun and games and hanging out, and like you're gonna have rounds where it's pretty benign, but then there's gonna be rounds where it's like, yeah, shit's hitting the fan, or like, oh yeah, we're going on a house fire, but it turns out it was started by a crazy dude who wants to shoot us as we roll in. You know what I mean? Like there's just like, are those days that shit hits the fan and you need to like be able to show the newer guys like, hey, you can't be complacent and you need to be on your A game, but understand like once you get there, it's also enjoyable. So it's, I don't know. It's a weird dance for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're really good at, you know, like fucking around in the station with your boys. And then once the tones drop, like immediately switching roles and being a professional. But it can also be hard, like I mentioned on this show before, like waking up at 2 a.m, going on a gunshot wound, dealing with that, handling it, going to the hospital, getting back, and you're like, okay, well, it's 3 a.m. It's like time to go back to sleep, I guess. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
You know? Or, well, we were eating dinner, and now we just went on that shit, and now we're going to finish dinner and hang out like it didn't happen, you know?
It is such a weird world. I was actually talking about it with a couple people the last two sets that I worked was, and one of the things that is related to this conversation that I've really noticed, and I've kind of, especially honestly the last two shifts, I've kind of brought up with numerous people because I think it's that line of us switching back and forth from being very, very professional and doing our job, and the large majority of us do our job really, really well because it's like when shit's real, we do perform, you know, and the large majority of us understand the severity and understand how detrimental like our skills are and how we treat the public and all of that. And we do a really, really good job for the most part. But one of the things that I've actually noticed, and one of the worst I've ever felt on scene, honestly, was because we're so good of like clicking in, being very professional and doing our job and doing it really, really well. And then it's honestly too a coping mechanism, right? Is like we poke fun at those things. We develop this really dark sense of humor that if we were to talk to most of the public, they'd be like, oh, you are proper fucked. Which maybe, I don't even know if that's the case, but it's probably our in my experience, and this is how I justify it, is I think it is a coping mechanism, right? If like we can't poke fun at these really horrible things that happen, then I think it eats you up. Like, you got to have an outlet for it, you know, and we're really good at doing that. And one of the things that I've noticed is, and back to this specific scene, we ran a full arrest, did the thing, wasn't able to save the patient, got done, told the family. I mean, as you can imagine, this is the absolute worst day of their life. They just lost one of their family members. It was very traumatic. We get out, we literally walk across the street, and we've clicked. We're no longer on that job. We're no longer on that scene. We're on scene still. But all of us, we click over and we're like, oh yeah, talking about the day. What are we going to do? We got to go to Smith's, grab food, you know, but high five, like laughing, joking, literally across the street. I look over and the patient's family is staring at us. Yeah. And I saw what they felt. And I'm like, oh my God, we got to get, this is horrible. We have got to get out of this scenario. And I've noticed it a few different times. And I think one of the things we have to be more aware of is like where those lines are, you know, and like if you're still kind of on scene, we have got to like still maintain that level of professionalism until we find the space that we can.
Yeah, I have a very similar story. Michael Kelly, he was here at the gym for a little while. He's my best friend in the world. He just recently moved to Chicago. And right before, probably a few months before he moved, we go on a 16-year-old shot himself in the head in the basement. Him and I are on the ambo. He was dead on arrival. There's nothing we could do for him. There's brain matter everywhere. Yeah. We walk out into the front yard, and we hadn't really interacted prior to the call. We just kind of we're going to do our job. We go inside the house. So then afterwards, the family kind of follows us out because they didn't want to be inside. We're there. Yeah. Family member did that, you know, and me and Mike, like, high five, like, what's up, homie? How you doing? And same thing. Look behind us. The family members are just hysterical, standing right behind us. I'm like, fuck, not good, Shane.
Yeah. Know? It's an interesting world too, because one of the things that I think I've realized is there's the percentage of people that I think can do our jobs, that can do them well too, is like understand that this is the job, and I can almost disassociate and do the thing and deal with this very traumatic scenario right now, right here, are probably those same people that are good at like clicking in and clicking out, which is, from the public's perception, can be very hard. And I mean, again, I'm sure you felt horrible. I felt horrible looking at those people and being like, oh my God, like this is, but it's interesting because it's this weird paradox where there's I think a lot of the population might not be as good at doing that. So it's just like, I feel horrible, but there may be one of the things that I've realized with the fire service is it fits me really well. Like, I click into it really well. Like I can't imagine like doing another job necessarily, because it feels like I'm decent at it, you know, like I click into it really well. But I don't know if that's, obviously I don't think that's the majority of the public, because when we talk about those things to a lot of people, they're like, I don't know how you do that. And I'm like, well, I don't know how I would do anything else.
Yeah.
You know, is like, this feels like it's the job for me, you know?
Yeah. It's like you were saying that, like, if you were to make those dark jokes to anybody who's not initiated, the uninitiated, if you will.
Yeah.
Like, that they would think like, oh, we're truly fucked. And I've been in like conversations with, it was me and Lindsay, actually.
Oh, sweet.
Funny story. So we go down, compete at Worlds a couple of years ago. And so then like us and like a few other people from the gym, we like go out afterwards, and, you know, we're just out in the town. We're sitting down eating somewhere. And that previous set, I had been on a vehicle versus tram. And just to give a heads up to everybody listening, like, the guy was fine. No one was dead. No one was really seriously injured. Like, it was a pretty benign call, even though it sounds drastic, you know.
Yeah.
But Lindsay was like, oh yeah, I saw that call come in. Like, what happened? And I was just like, guy tried to beat the train. Train won, and we both start fucking cracking up.
Yeah.
And we both stop, look up, and see everybody else, and they're just straight, like zero expression on their face. And Lindsay looks back over at me and she goes, "Yeah, we're not fucked up."
Yeah.
But the funny thing is like, I see it from the other perspective of, I don't think we're fucked up. I think
Thank
it's
you.
the
Thank you
rest.
for that. Thanks, Nick.
I needed that.
Yeah, I needed that too. Thank you.
Well, I think it's the rest of the world that lives in a bubble. Whereas I think we see the reality of what's actually occurring day in, day out. Us cops, doctors, even nurses,
Yeah.
I think we see the reality of what's actually going on. Like, we know more about someone's next door neighbor than they do themselves. You know what I mean? Like, especially because we go into those more intimate, vulnerable moments in people's lives. But I think it's the rest of the world that kind of shuts everything out and thinks that it's just constantly doomsday out there. And you're just kind of going, well, actually, it's just another Wednesday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. But that's just my perspective on it.
I could see that. And I actually have kind of one of the things that my thought process is kind of on that too, is like, I do think we see depths of reality that a lot of people don't. And they maybe even don't even want to they almost it's their choice to not get into that depth of reality. Is like, yeah, this stuff happens. Yeah, this stuff happens more often than you would even anticipate. It's like that's one of the things, I'm sure you guys are probably the same, is like, I'm always like amazed at what gets covered by the news and what doesn't. It's just like weird things get covered, and then crazy things don't get any sort of coverage. And I'm like, I don't even understand how this algorithm works. But yeah, I would agree with you that, yeah, just it's different levels of reality. And I think we see a level that a lot of people are unwilling to even acknowledge exists.
Yeah.
So at what point in your fire service did you start the Sect?
Oh yeah. Actually the Sect itself,
if you can even just explain real quick what it is to people who don't know.
Yeah. So I almost forgot. I was like in the job. I forgot this was like centered around my story and fitness and the gym stuff. So while I was training MMA is when I found strength and conditioning. And it was interesting because I went to being involved in hockey. I kind of had this little exposure to strength and conditioning, when I was in high school. Me and one of my big buddies did the whole high school thing. We'd go to the gym, a big box gym. And even back then, the big box gym environment did not feel like my environment. We would go to Excel, but me and my buddy would go there. Which is crazy now, having kids. And in high school, we were going at 10 o'clock at night, just when the gym was not crowded, so we could do our thing. So I've kind of got exposed to kind of strength and conditioning through hockey. And then in MMA, I got invited to train at a gym here locally that had an amazing reputation, as Jim Jones. And back when I got invited to train there, it was there was a group of climbers and a group of fighters, and it was pretty low key. And it was honestly, it was on almost like that kind of front line of innovative strength and conditioning, right? It was right when also CrossFit was kind of getting popular, which, building GPP, as the industry calls, general physical preparedness, is definitely not new, but it's been around for a long time. But CrossFit and being fit across the board and what we were doing was, again, kind of on that front line at Jim Jones. And it was amazing. It was such a really good opportunity. And it really opened my eyes to a different level of like fitnessing, you know? And it was cool. And back to things that I've been like a moth to the flame, man, is like intensity is just like, okay, I just am attracted to it and I love it. And it was intense, you know, we worked really, really hard. And I fell in love with strength and conditioning, this kind of style of like, you know, we're not trying to be the strongest and we're not trying to be like ultra endurance athletes, kind of in this middle where intensity and volume cross, where it gets really hard and it's super intense. It's just like, oh yeah, that's where I want to be, right where those things cross, where I feel the worst, you know. So I got invited to train there and started training and fell in love with it. And when I actually switched over from the cemetery sexton job to the fire gig, I actually took a pretty big pay cut. And to do that, I was like, okay, again, I had a family. I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to kind of make ends meet. And at that, I got presented with an opportunity to start training people. And I was like, oh yeah, this is great. This will kind of take over where I was putting time and energy in MMA, and I can kind of do this strength and conditioning thing. And I absolutely love it and developed amazing relationships doing it. And related to the fire service and related to brotherhood and building camaraderie is like back when those when you're doing something very intense and when it's really damn hard, going through that with groups of people, you start to develop really good like relationships with, you know, and I just absolutely loved it. And started training people there kind of before the fire gig, is like right when I started fire, I started training people. So that was like 2011, 2012. I'd been training in that style since like 2006. And then things kind of progressed and things got wild, and I was presented with an opportunity to start our own project. And it was definitely not intentional. It was like, it was definitely not on my radar. It just kind of got thrown in my lap. It's kind of a funny story, but I ended up getting essentially kicked out of Jim Jones. And a lot of the people that I trained, I did my due diligence to tell them, okay, well, I'm no longer a trainer, so you're going to have to find another avenue. And they were like, well, where are you going? What are you doing? And I was like, well, I guess we'll start a gym. And so I had some really good conversations with my wife, who was amazing and super, super supportive. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. And I had all this support from the people that I trained. And there was a handful of people that were like, let's make this thing happen. So then we started the Sect, and, it's a tongue in cheek, I think that's the phrase, but joke, pointing to, I was part of this gym that was called Jim Jones, pointing to cults. We're in Utah, lots of cult activity around Utah. So I was like, the Sect will work, and started the project. And even our logo, which is like hands clasped. I don't have one on my shirt. That's came from an old Philadelphia fire mark. So I pulled that. I was back in academy. I remember seeing those fire marks, and I kind of am a sucker for tradition and history. And I was like, those are cool. And I remember seeing that old Philadelphia fire mark that has those hands crossed, and I was like, damn, that's cool, And then I was like, when we started the gym, I was like, okay, there's going to be a lot of influences from MMA and from hockey and whatever, like Japanese culture, like karate, and like everything that's like kind of in my my bandwidth and my kind of mentality and my personal kind of what has gave me a lot of perspective on life. I wanted to be kind of a part of it, and fire was a huge part, so it was it was a weird transition, and extremely rewarding. It's been awesome. It's kind of sounds funny, but one of the things that I've really, and I've said this to multiple people, is like, man, I got involved in the fire service to kind of make a difference, and like, I love that. I love the idea of service and trying to do something that matters, you know, is like, there's a big part of me that is very kind of practical where I'm like, oh, if I'm going to spend time doing something, I want it to like actually matter to people and to myself. You know, I don't want to like waste my time and probably from my perspective with even with the cemetery sexton job, I've been surrounded by death for, I mean, my whole adult life. Even when I was a high school kid working summers, like when I started working for the city, my first job was I was just weed eating headstones, you know, and mowing the cemeteries. And I remember, I mean, I've been around death, like again, my whole adult life. So, I have this perspective of like appreciating time, and I don't want to waste it on anything. And the gym is this interesting world where, I mean, at face value, it's just like it's working out, which is crazy. And it's not like, that's not worth a bunch of my time and effort, right? I love it and it makes me feel really great. And we could go down rabbit holes of how important that is, but working out and like, you know, going for runs and everything's good for your cardiovascular system. All of the things is great, but it's just like, I want to do something that actually is like really matters again to people and to myself. And I'll tell you what, man, is like, it's crazy how impactful the gym is and how rewarding it is. And like, I joke, but there's truth in every joke, is like, I feel like I make more of a difference, in people's lives, like conducting sessions and having this project as a gym almost more than the fire service. You know, the fire service is very tangible, very acute. Like we get to go do our job when it's needed. And, you know, some of those calls are like, you can really make a difference. They're definitely not most of the calls, but when you make a difference, it's a big difference and it's extremely rewarding. And again, it's that validation, right? I feel validated, like, oh, I've spent my time doing something that actually fucking matters in this life. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's great. But it's wild. The gym is, and maybe it's my biased perception on it, but man, it means a lot. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to a lot of the people that are around. And I don't even know how we got on this subject, dude. How would we start talking about the meaning of fitnessing?
No, I like it because, and I know you were wanting to touch on this. Like fitness in the fire service is very a shotgun approach, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, we got like, you get guys that just want to do nothing but lift heavy. And then they're surprised when they got back issues. And it's like, well, or you got guys that are like, I eat healthy. And they're at the hospital at 2 a.m. eating chips, and you're like,
yeah.
Or it's, you know, like there's just this. It's amazing how like health, fitness, especially in our line of work, where I think we start on the back foot. The moment you start the job, I think you start on the back foot, as far as your health, be that physical, mental, whatever, and you're fighting an uphill battle your entire career. And so I'm curious, like, your approach as far as not only longevity in the job, but also for life and the things that you want to do. Be that you want to continue grappling, be that you want to be able to not get up out of the recliner and go, oh, my back.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's a lot to unpack there. Because, I mean, back injuries specifically, one of the things I've learned is, like, it's not a matter of like if, but it's when, you know. And like I've been able to work with a lot of people over it's crazy. It's been like 20 years of strength and conditioning kind of experience, and dealing with a bunch of people. And one of the things that is interesting with fitness specific too is back to it being super impactful in people's lives and like empowering. There's so many cool things that are byproducts of like fitness. But one of the things that kind of happens is, you know, if you're an individual and you've had a positive like experience with strength and conditioning or getting strong or whatever the thing is like, it's probably pretty impactful in your life. And you're like, this is the way. It's just like, well, that's like, you're an N of one. It's your way that you got there.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you're like, it's yours very specific scenario, you know? And then firefighters are an interesting bunch too, because I would agree with you. We've got a lot of things that are like, that we have to combat, right? I mean, the general public too, you know, I've kind of joked is like, we're all in this big fight. You know, we're in a fight with gravity and time. We're all going to lose, right? We're all going to lose those fights, but it's just like, are we the type of person that is not going to have the courage to make that fight, and we're just going to like fall back in and let those things win? Or are we going to stay in the fight for as long as we possibly can? And it's an interesting kind of world with the firefighters too, because again, the general public, we've got a lot of things that we're having to fight against. In addition to gravity and time, we've got like the average American diet, which is horrible. Our life of being very, very sedentary is like, even active people sit a lot, you know what I mean? And I've got this big, like, I have this big fight with just sitting, you know, and just, I've got this kind of super informative, really revolutionary like graph that shows like health on one axis and time spent on ass on the other axis. And it's a direct correlation. Like the longer you sit, the more unhealthy you are and the more broken you are. So we have, you know, general public, we have all those same battles, but then we have disrupted sleep. You know, we get together on duty with predominantly a bunch of, you know, middle-aged men, like responsible for coming up with meals, and just like, okay, we're going to be eating a lot. You know, I actually plan personally my calorie intake, like when I'm on duty, I mean, it's probably, I mean, and I've tracked it before, but I'm probably consuming, I mean, upwards of 4,000 calories a day on duty. And then when I'm off, it's like 1,500 or 2,000 maybe. Like, it's a pretty dramatic difference, and I almost account for it, you know, but a lot of people don't do that. And then also a lot of people, they're this is kind of where my perspective on fitness and what kind of the expectations are in general, I think are really, really low, you know? And I don't know if that's a positive thing or a bad or a negative thing, but I think all of our perception and our expectations of where the baseline is, or even where midline is pretty low. So we all have a tendency to think we're doing well when we may not be. You know, we may be pretty on the low end of the spectrum of what we're actually physically capable of doing and what meets kind of the expectations of being active. And this kind of works its way back into diet too, is like, you know, I mean, I'll eat pretty much everything, you know, but I understand what I'm consuming and I pay attention to what I'm consuming. But if you're not maintaining a pretty robust kind of fitness, active lifestyle, and you're still eating the way I do, that'd probably lead to really big problems. I had a really good interview with a deputy chief. This was probably about, oh man, it's probably been about 6 months ago now, and it was awesome. And one of the things we talked about was he's doing his managing officer certification through UFRA, and one of the requirements from that, if I'm not super in tune with what the requirements are, but it's almost like a kind of they have to do like a thesis kind of, and his was on firefighter fitness, and it was really, really good conversation. And one of the things we talked about was like, what are some kind of problems within firefighter fitness that maybe from my perspective that I've seen. And I kind of boiled it down to like three main things. Is one of them is accountability. And this is firefighters, but also just general public is accountability. Like I think from my experience and perception, I think all of us need help being held accountable, right? Like I think we need outside kind of influence and something to be accountable for. I think most of us, I know myself, if I'm just accountable to myself, I drop the ball a lot. And maybe there's something to be said there with my personal mindset of self-worth. I don't know, but if I'm accountable for something outside of myself, it helps me for sure. That's one of the things I've realized and I've watched happen not only with firefighters but in public in general is accountability. Another one is just, and the biggest, probably one of the biggest ones is just consistency, is like being consistent. And then the other one is just ego, is like we all fall into this kind of ego trap where ego is not necessarily always a negative thing. It helps us do things at a high level. If you believe or you want to do well at a job, your responsibilities as a medic or a firefighter is like ego can be a very good thing because it helps you get really proficient and can be very, very positive. But if one of the things I've noticed with firefighters is like one of the things you talked about, Nick, is, and this isn't exclusive with firefighters, but most people will gravitate towards like one end of the spectrum or another, meaning like they'll either really just be like, oh, I just want to get strong, and they'll do, sets, or they want to look really good. They'll kind of build this, like one of the ways I explain it to people is like you kind of build this column or this monolith of ability and performance, right? Like you want to look a certain way, so you train just for aesthetics, and so you build this kind of monolith that produces a lot of muscle and a pretty lean body weight, which is not necessarily a negative thing. That can be a very positive thing. Or you get someone that's like, oh, I just want to be strong, so they'll do sets of 3 or 4 at really high percentages of their 1 rep max, and they get really strong. Or they gravitate towards just like, oh, I'm an endurance athlete. I'm just going to do, I'm just going to run for extended periods of time, which is called jogging. So you get these people that get very isolated, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you do those things long enough, you're kind of losing a lot of that general base of, in what we call in the industry of GPP, general physical preparedness. You're neglecting a lot of it. And one of the things that I'm a big believer is like doing anything's better than doing nothing. If you're trying to hone in on a certain demographic, and if they're very, very sedentary, is just like getting up and going for a walk on the treadmill or a walk is amazing. Like let's do that. But then you start, if you've already gotten to that point, then we start getting into deeper conversations of like what's going to be better for you, both for like the longevity aspect of it or durability of it. Or then you start building a program that's like, okay, I'm not going to build a monolith of ability. I want to build a big base. And most people will gravitate towards the ends because they don't get a lot of negative feedback when you start crossing those lines. Back to like the intensity, like when you start doing like, I've worked really hard to try to push away from CrossFit, but when people like look at our space, they're like, oh, that's a CrossFit gym, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it's, I guess, yeah, whatever. And I don't fight it as much as I used to, but very, very similar, especially like the original kind of thought of CrossFit. Now the whole new thing is High Rocks, and whatever you're doing, keep doing the thing. Whatever gets you up and gets you motivated and gets you out of the recliner doing stuff, just do that, But if you get to a certain point and you want to have a conversation of what's going to be what you're going to get the best bang for your buck doing, then I usually have those conversations with people. But a lot of people will gravitate towards ends because when you do like, you know, a CrossFit Metcon or whatever tag word you want to throw in there, or like our strength and conditioning sessions, when we get to the conditioning, that's where it really, you get a lot of negative feedback. It's really, really hard. And a lot of people, it's unless you have that accountability again, and unless if I'm doing that, if I'm trying to get to that intensity by myself, it's very, very hard, you know? And I'm a person that absolutely loves intensity, but if I'm going and I have like Shane next to me, I'm like, okay, we're in this together, bud. Like, let's do this. And there's so many benefits from that, both for me personally with my physiology, and then also like doing hard shit for myself is good, but doing hard shit with another person is also awesome, because then you start to develop really cool relationships. And that's probably, I mean, with what kind of drove Shane to the fire service, the brotherhood, is the same thing that drove me to it too, is like that brotherhood, sisterhood. And if you want to develop good relationships with people, do hard stuff together, you know, because it just takes away a lot of the noise. And like, I think also when we do that, if you're willing to go to those depths and go that hard, like with somebody else, it's like this, we get it when we go on a really hard call, or you're going through academy or whatever, you know, our demographics get that stuff, and we develop really good, really solid relationships and friendships because we get it through almost our job. But when there's a level back to almost, it's kind of related to one of the things we talked about with different levels of reality, and like getting to the reality of who you are, and like being vulnerable to like go as absolutely hard as you can and be kind of a pile of mush after, like just exposing that to someone too, I think develops a solid, like, oh, I can back to trust too. It's like, oh, I trust you, you know, I've seen you're willing to get really, really vulnerable with me, you know, and like get to that level of like, oh, I'm going to absolutely do everything I can, even if I fall short. And that kind of relates back. I'm kind of trying to give this some structure with this conversation. It almost gets back to the ego thing too, where I think it's a really big problem with the general public, but also the fire service is, I think a lot of us, we get into this mentality that we're not willing to be exposed. You know, I see it on the training grounds all the time, especially like the more senior we get, like we haven't been training to maybe the extent we should. And then we go to the training ground and we're like scared to be exposed, to be vulnerable. It's just like, well, this is the time. This is the time to be exposed. Like, hopefully we develop a culture where we're like, yeah, dude, fuck up. But this is training. Like this.
You know what drives me crazy is when you show up to a training and people are like, what's the scenario? Let's walk through the building. Bitch, do you do that on a real call?
Yeah. It's
because they want the best time, or they want
it's a weird ego thing. And I don't want to look like an asshole just like anyone else. But sure. I also am like, I want to be exposed. Yeah. I want to be like, one of the things that difference in mentality. And I try not to like, separate myself. But one of the things I've noticed in the fire service is when like there's a promotional test coming up and everyone's like, I mean, it's nerve wracking for sure. And everyone's like, oh, I hate this. And I'm like, oh, dude, I actually like it. Like, I want to be tested. And I've fallen short a lot, and I continue to fall short. But I actually like it. I like seeing where I line up. Even if I fall short, like I like understand. It's awareness. It's back to reality. Is like, I have this idea of how good of a firefighter I am in my head, but that's not reality. Right. I could be shit. Like, and I'll tell you what is like, I've been an engineer now for a long time. And like, you put me behind that pump panel, I'll get the job done. And I know the engine, and I know how to problem solve, and I'll definitely be the guy. But if you make me take that written test right now, dude, I will fall short. But I'm glad to do it because I'll be like, oh yeah, my hydraulics definitely are not what they used to be. You know what I mean? So it's this weird world, and back to like ego and how it can be so great for us, but so bad. I think that's one of the things that I love about like this environment with the strength and conditioning is like one of the cultures we have is like, whatever you have during that day is like, just give it your all. And if you fall short, awesome. Like at least you did it. Now we know. Yeah. Now we know we fell short of that expectation. And even if you continue to fall short, if you can justify that, this is like, there's a difference. I'm one of the things that I want this project, like the Sect, to be is a resource more than authority, right? Where it's just like, yeah, if you fall short of our expectations, that's fine. As long as you're aware of what those expectations are, back to our understanding of where that baseline of fitness is. I think in my opinion and perspective, I think most of us, it's a little too low. And then like firefighters specifically, like there's this weird world where we, the Sect, are a resource, but I think we need an authority. I think we need accountability. I think we need something in place to like hold us accountable, because a lot of us, we come on when we get hired, we're pretty damn fit, even though we have some hurdles, and some things fighting us. But we get the job, and then one of my big goals with the fire service is like, we have that like top 10% of like specifically with health and fitness, right? That will always value it, and they'll put forth a lot of energy to maintain their health and fitness. But then there's like this big gap of people that it's a really easy job because of those legit hurdles we have to like fall, right? Like once you get hired and you're starting to deal with disrupted sleep and all of these things that are big, they're very impactful. It's really easy to have in our head that we're still really fit. Like we're as fit as we were when we started the job. And maybe we don't even need it every call, right? Or the last few years or whatever, we have a lot of outs, or we haven't been on a really good working fire where we've been tested. But those still may come, and something to hold us accountable outside of ourselves, I think, is a really, really valuable thing.
You mentioned having that like authority. Where do you think that authority comes from?
Oh, that's a good question. I've battled with that, like, personally. Like, I don't know where that authority should come from. I think in what I've seen through my fire career, and specifically this is talking about like fitness, right? But it can be whatever, whether it's our tactics, our fire tactics, our strategy, our medical skills, is like, I think we do need an authority, and there's a lot of authority based in other things, right? With our trainings and our certifications, maintaining our medic, and but with fitness specifically, we don't have really an authority in that realm. So I don't know the answer to it, whether it comes from the department. The department might have to decide to be like, okay, this is our expectation. And most of us have like again, we call ours a WPA, a work performance assessment, whether it's an annual like physical test or whatever. Most of us have something like that. And so it's like this cloud over us that's a little bit of an authority holding us accountable. But I know in the Valley, like my experience with that is like, even if we have that, it's not like really enforced. And I'll tell you what, man, I've battled with what my opinion is of like what the best avenue is there, right? Because and I was actually talking to Shane about this the other day, and I've talking about with a lot of firefighters that train in here, is just like, man, I love that we have like some of the amazing things that drove me to the fire service that I absolutely love about it are the same things that really kind of affect us negatively. Like in this specific scenario is like, a perfect example is like if I am like the brotherhood and sisterhood where I like look out for each other, and I think that's a very positive thing because we need it when we're on calls, and like it's a very cool thing, and it's one of the things that I love about the fire service. But it's an interesting thing that it's like this paradox that flips on its head. Like if Shane and I like fast forward, 10 years from now, and Shane's still a firefighter, and hopefully I'm retired by that point. But let's say we're working on the same crew, right? And we've developed this relationship over a long career of working together, and it's a solid relationship. There's some really cool, solid friendships that happen in the fire service. And I'm responsible to run him through his work performance assessment or his CPAT or whatever. And he's struggling. Maybe he's had an injury. Maybe he's let himself go. And I've got the stopwatch, and he's close to the end, and he misses it by 3 seconds. You know what I'm going to do? He passed. And it's hard for me because that's like this huge integrity issue where I'm like, and I'd probably tell him, I'd be like, dude, I mean, I don't know, like it's this weird world of like our peers are testing each other and we look out for each other, which is a cool thing. But one of the things I've realized is I think there needs to be a third entity, an unbiased kind of authority that's kind of out there, whether it's like the department, but that can lead to some weird stuff where, is the department holding me? And a lot of firefighters, a lot of us are very stubborn individuals. And just like, if things get imposed on me and you're like, you're requiring me to do this thing, I'm going to fight it, which I don't know if that's the best case, but I think like a really good, like to have authority that's like pushed away from us, pushed away from the department is like, there's this entity out there. Right. And we can actually, there's those things that exist, like NFPA, right? There's requirements with like METs. And like, one of the things that I would really like to see in the fire service is like, we do like our annual physical assessment where we get our blood drawn, and every once in a while we get our chest x-ray and make sure we don't have lung cancer. And we're doing so many great things. And I think it's trending in a very, very positive way. I mean, there's amazing things that are happening here locally with cancer, right? It's just like, that's awesome, right? In fitness specifically, one of the things that I personally would like to see is like involved with our annual physicals, incorporate like, a VO2 max test, or, a way you can easily convert VO2 max to METs. And there's an NFPA that has a requirement for like, okay, if you're below this point on your MET score, you're unfit for duty. So there's an authority already there. I think we just got to lean into it and accept it. Right. And then have a way to measure it. So one of my I would love to see us here locally or in the fire service in general, hold us all accountable for that stuff, is just like, with our annual physical assessment, is like, let's throw in a VO2 max test, and let's throw in like a DEXA scan or a bod pod to also hold us accountable. And I there's a bunch of ways to do that. That's third party, where you can get this data, and then it's up to the department to be like, okay, are we going to enforce this or not? And I think that's the line where if we don't have those lines, like, let's just figure out what we actually need to do the job well, and also what sets us up well for longevity and retirement. Is like, if we don't have those things to hold us accountable, it's human nature to like just slump off, right? And it's just like, I would love to see something like that happen, and then us, as far as our local departments, just being like, okay, well, here's the minimum standard. Let's make sure everyone hits this. And if people don't, if people are falling short, like, of course, let's be a resource to help them up. But if they don't hit it, then they don't hit it. And like, we got to have some lines drawn in the sand where if we fall short, we got to be either brought up, or we got to have some reality, a dose of reality, to be like, okay, maybe this isn't the job for me, or maybe I'm no longer fit for this job. Maybe I should retire, right? And that's hard. It's tough because we develop such good relationships, and we're like, I don't want to see my buddy be forced into retirement, but we got to draw that line somewhere, and it's got to be hard somewhere, you know?
Yeah. In a perfect world, if you were to create something for your department or the valley-wide, say you implement a DEXA scan, VO2 max test, say like your buddy doesn't make it, what's the repercussions? What would you like to see happen at that point?
Yeah. I helped when we came up with our WPA.
What does that consist of? What does your guys' test look like?
It's basically like a CPAT. It's like a course where you go, we start out, we kind of walk / run around a corner, you grab a hydrant bag, you address a hydrant, you do the things. There's a whole bunch of like different stops or skills in this kind of fitness assessment. And that's the line too, where something like that, you're also measuring someone's skill set, right? One of the things, and you guys have probably experienced this too, especially now that things kind of have changed in the fire service here locally, where for a long time, the only people that were applying them were people that had their fire certs. And now it's kind of changed where it's like, oh, you got to dress a hydrant. And they're like, what do you mean? You know, it's a kind of very, very specific skill. So ours does fall into there's some skill set that if you're unfamiliar with that stuff, it's going to affect you negatively. Where like a VO2 max is just a raw, like an assessment there is just a raw fitness, data driven, very, very subjective test where you either hit it or you don't, right? So ours is like a CPAT. There's a bunch of different kind of skills in a what's the word I'm looking for? Evolution. Yeah. So you kind of go through the whole thing. And if people fall short, there is, you have like I can't remember it off the top of my head. But you have like I think there's like a 4 to 6 week opportunity to retest. And then if you don't hit it again, then it gets pushed out. And then at that time, if you don't hit it for like the second or the third time, there's like almost like a 3-strike rule, and it gets pushed out longer and longer. And if you don't hit it by the third time, then it's just like, all right, well, what are our options? You're deemed unfit for duty. Do we have, something that you can do that is unrelated, or do we have some light duty stuff that you can do? To my knowledge, I think we only had one person kind of going down that avenue, and then they retired before they kind of hit that, but they were falling short. But
is it more skill based, or is it more fitness rated?
I think it's more fitness related than skill. So our specifically, we do a walk around a corner, we grab a hydrant bag, dress a hydrant, come out of that, do a forcible entry, kind of stop, which is a little bit, there's not a really good way to measure that. After that, you kind of do a hose pull, hose drag, and then you go inside to our tower, you duck, and you do like a crawl. You go up the tower with a hose load, and then you like finish with a sled drag, So ours is more fitness based than skill, but there's some skill stuff in there, Oh, there's a ladder raise and lower. and that stuff's great. You know, it's like some of those things, it might be, depending on who you are, it might be the only time you dress a hydrant that year, which is awesome. It's like that level of accountability is great. But I think backing up us as a department, I do think we should do our due diligence to try to give people like opportunities to pass, but if something's not working, then again, at some point we got to kind of draw the line and be like, okay, you're not fit for this job, which is a hard pill to swallow. And it's not an age-based thing. It's not a gender-based thing. It's just like, there's things in this world that we're just unfit to do, and like, that's tough. I know. But back to reality, it's just like, it's a reality. It's like, there's certain things that if you can't do this thing, I had to even when I started down the fire service, when I was fighting, I was like walking around at like 165, 170. I was like fighting at 155. I was a lot thinner. And I was like, dude, I quickly realized I cannot hold down a 2.5. Like,
yeah,
I need more mass. And I'm like, okay, I got to build more mass if I want to do this job well. And so it's just like, it wasn't a question of like, well, the question was, do I want to do the job well, or do I want to still be lean, and still maintain this body weight? And it's just like, well, I want to do the job well. The 2.5 doesn't care that I'm 170 pounds,
Yeah.
So that's tough. But I think, again, it's a job that I don't know where that line is, honestly.
It's tough. The physical fitness test has been a hot topic within our department the last, year or so.
Yeah.
They've really been pushing it.
How do you feel about it?
I mean, I think it's needed for sure. I think it's interesting that it's such a big requirement to, one, get hired, and then it's such a big requirement throughout the entire academy to be physically fit. And then once you get out of the academy, it just goes away.
Yeah.
And just to play devil's advocate, you said only one person has ever come close to not passing yours or going down that path. Do you think that means the test isn't practical to what the job requires, or it's not hard enough?
Yeah, personally, again, and I understand my perspective on these things is biased, but personally, I think our expectation is way too low, generally. With that being said, that doesn't mean that there's not a place on our teams for different people.
Yeah.
Right. But I think we have to get better at defining what those roles are, because there's certain things that it's such a weird world, because the large majority of the time, those things are not required, right? Because the large majority of our time as our job, it's not like, I'm not dragging a patient, or I'm not dragging Shane out of the basement, right?
But if it is required, it's fucking required.
Totally, right? And that's the thing, is like, I struggle, and there's an internal conflict with this too, because I'm like, I struggle, like, okay, if I was in that position, like, worst case scenario, let's say we're down in the basement, shit hits the fan, you fucking bust your leg or whatever, and I'm down there and I'm not able to get you out. What am I going to do in that position? Right? I don't know. Am I going to also be stuck down there with you? And we're going to get another person
Are you going to create another casualty yourself?
Totally. And am I going to get out? And even if I got out, would I be able to live with myself, dude?
Yeah.
I don't think I could. And that's a personal thing. And I don't know how we kind of got into that avenue, but it's a weird world where our physical ability is not needed to the extent that I think. Well, it's definitely not needed to the extent that it has the probability. The probability is very low, but when it is needed, it's dramatically needed. And one of the things that I've kind of talked about is like our fitness, our physical ability is like the tool, right? Like we're using our body, and no matter what your your knowledge is of like tactics and strategy and knowing how to read smoke, and if you have all the tools and you're doing everything properly, if you can't physically perform the task, then that's a problem. And I think there's a lot of us that even if we have all the tools and we know all the little tricks of like how to get a firefighter out of a basement with whatever, fill in the blank, is like, if we physically can't do the thing, that's a problem, right? And I think it's a lot of us. I think we have this kind of false sense of security, like, oh, and it's so hard because that will likely never happen. But if it does, it's like, man, I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility to try my damnedest that if I was ever presented with that problem, that it wasn't something that was in my control that enabled me from doing the job. Mm-hmm. And it's back to like roles and responsibilities. One of the things that I realized, like putting people through kind of our fitness physical assessment, is like just general mass matters, is like, I actually had a big group of very, very fit females kind of run through it. And it had nothing to do with gender, but it was just like size and mass. And like, there's like different somatotypes, body types that really excel at different things, there's always the exceptions, and those exceptions are amazing, and that's great. And if you can do the thing, if you can play in the NBA and you're Spud Webb, that's awesome. But it's just like, that's not the standard, and like, I don't know where to kind of draw those lines, but I think it does fall into an accountability bit, and like understanding what's needed and what could be needed, and making sure that we kind of hold that line, because it's a really easy line to get pushed. And then it's crazy because if I go my whole career, if I go 10 years, 15 years, and I haven't ever been presented with that problem with getting you out of the basement, Shane, I'm like, it's really easy for me to sit in the recliner,
Yeah.
So again, it's just like, how do we like solve that problem with accountability? And I think it is like, we need an outside entity, and we already have that. We have things like NFPA, we have things like a bunch of data that show what's healthy, right? And then at some level, I think our departments need to be like, okay, here's the line, whatever that line is, here's the line. Let's either bring everyone up to it. If you can't meet the line, then this job's not for you. And I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but I think it's reality.
Yeah. We had a few years ago, we had a crew they responded on a call. They were in a new construction building. They're still under construction rather. And the stairwell gave way and they fell through the stairwell. The captain got life flighted out. He's dealt with a ton of injuries since. And during a meeting that we had in regards to the physical fitness tests, I'm paraphrasing, but he's basically said, like, you guys are potentially one stairwell away from not passing whatever test you put on.
Yeah.
And this dude is very, very competent. He's one of my favorite dudes. But I mean, he brings up a good point.
Yeah.
Like, he got injured on the job and we put on this test. He may have a bad day due to his previous injuries and not pass it, but he's still competent. He can still do the job very, very well. But if he doesn't pass that line, what do you do at that point?
I've been very mixed about this since it's been brought up, because when it was brought up years ago, it's been like a reoccurring thing in our department.
Yeah.
As far as like, do we have a physical agility test that's annual and blah, blah, blah. And when it came up years ago, I was like, well, yeah, like why wouldn't you? I mean, then you have incidents like that, or I've had plenty of injuries issues throughout my life with my career choices. And I'm like, if if I were to show up on that day that my back, my knee, my hip starts to give me a problem, like there's a chance I don't do well. And then when this time now that they're talking about it, they're like, well, we sent so-and-so through it. They walked through it and they made it in time. And I'm like, so it's not a physical fitness test
So
then.
that's the standard that we're holding. Somebody can just fucking walk
That
through
too.
and pass.
And so I'm like, okay, is it a skill assessment? If it's a skill assessment, let's call it a skill assessment. Is it a physical test? Like, then I'm more apt to say, like, let's look at VO2 number. Let's look at things that matter, because like our physicals are a joke. It's a basic blood panel. They don't look at like anything that's important. They do an EKG, like a hearing test, and then they go, "Oh, look, your hearing's getting worse." And you're like, "Yeah, no shit." And like that's the physical, you know.
Shane, you're still colorblind. I know that. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's so, but it's funny because it's like we could be improving these things, and it's like, okay, if we want to assess physical fitness and longevity, I do think that's extremely important. I just don't know that creating an SOG or a law, if you will. I'm of the mindset of more rules, more problems.
Oh, dude.
If you give an HR a
agree.
reason or something to point at, like you're just creating issues for yourself down the road. But that being said, I think in the fire service, I think we are our own worst enemies, because we're always of that bringing ego back into it of, we'll do less with more. We're all hazard approach and jack of all trades, master of nothing. And it's like, ugh, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But I think it's more of a cultural shift that we need to see in terms of like, hey, can we? So in the last year, our department hired a therapist. Fucking amazing. Like I can't tell you, like,
Yeah, she's great.
she's great, and I can't tell you how busy she is. And she's a great resource.
Specifically for the department?
Specifically for the department.
She's in house 4 days a week.
Oh my,
You
that's
can-
awesome.
You can call her whenever you need. Come in.
Yeah.
Yeah. She sees family members. She's awesome.
On duty, off duty, don't matter.
Whoa.
But it's like, that's a great cultural shift. You know what I mean? And so now there's also fights for like better training equipment, specifically in our gyms and our stations.
Oh, cool.
We have a captain that completely revamped one of the fitness areas, because the old one was a joke. It was in like a closet. And that actually happened at a previous station too. And he completely changed the location, revamped it, and it's incredible. And just better access, better opportunity, better equipment, as well as like inspiring one another, you know? And then now you got guys fighting for like the unions fighting for saunas for funding for that. And, we're our own worst enemies in the sense of like, we want to ask the state for recognition for certain cancer types, right? Which is kind of funny, because if you look at it from a medical point of view, it's like, why are we arguing about the type of cancer? It's kind of a joke, especially when you're asking lawmakers who know nothing about it to make these decisions. But like, if you're going to make those requests and those arguments of like, hey, can like we have some recognition for some of the hazards of our profession? It's like, how about we start doing things for ourselves, right? Like, cancer prevention does start with you, like what you consume, how you exercise, how you treat your body. Like, if you're sitting in the fucking recliner all day and your BMI is 30%, like you're fighting that uphill battle. And I think that's where that cultural shift comes into play of like, can we do things that make our job just the issues that we deal with, what can we do to improve those issues? And then all of a sudden, like, that question of, is that so-and-so physically fit for the job, it doesn't become a question anymore, because it just becomes the cultural norm rather than having this SOG to point at and cause issues for people down the road with bad backs.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. And I'm glad you brought that up. And one of the things that I really like where your head's going, Nick, is, and I agree with you, a lot of our and I've actually brought this up too, is like our physical test, our WPA, work performance assessment, is there's just so many variables in it, right? Whether you do well or not. It's like I even I'm almost a little bit backtracking now after listening to you talk, is like I am actually thinking it's almost a little bit more skill based than fitness. And one of the things I've talked about is like a fitness test needs to be repeatable, and you can't have all these different variables in there. Like even if you're good at like dressing a hydrant, if you cross thread it, like it's just going to affect you negatively. And then you got where's that line, and there's people that definitely can do the job really well, and maybe and honestly is like maybe that even though we feel like I feel like our work performance assessment expectation is way too low, maybe it's right, because I mean maybe that is what's needed to do the job, is like maybe even if you are dealing with a specific injury, you can still do this in this time frame. I don't know again what the answer is. I've went so many different times around the circle too. Like I want to try to do our best. I want to try to bring myself to the table and bring us as a fire service up to a different standard and a cultural shift. And I love the idea of something that is, like a VO2 max. You can't necessarily argue that, right? And like then you're like, well, what's actually needed to do the job? Which is a really hard question to answer, because it's just like, well, what's needed to do the job most of the time? the probability of like going on, a diabetic call or whatever our day-to-day activities, that our physical requirement is pretty low. But again, then it's just like, well, what happens if we hit something that is like, what we've trained our whole careers for? Yeah. What happens on that day? And just like, well, do we default to resources? Do we default to getting more people in? And maybe that is the answer. I honestly don't know. And to just back up, I think whether it's the fire service or the general public, I mean, the three big things I think are the big things, and like one of the things I love is just having something to be accountable for, whatever that thing is like, it helps us all, is like, whether it's our departments, drawing the line, whether it's our brothers and our sisters, or our buddies, our gym buddy is just like being like, yeah, dude, you're kind of getting soft, you gotta go train, bro. Whatever that thing is, I think it can be found in a whole bunch of different avenues, and it can be portrayed, and it can have a very negative kind of mindset or connotation about it, or like I can feel like that's being imposed on me, and I can feel like a victim of that, or I can be like, oh, I actually appreciate that, and I want to be held accountable, and it helps me. Yeah. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think accountability, whatever we can do to find it, I think is good. It's a weird world, fitness in general, I just the fitness itself is something, there's so many really great things about it for the person. Like if you can get the person that's inactive just to put on the shoes and tie their laces and go do whatever, is like the amount of positive effects that can have on someone is so big. I mean, and it's definitely more than the physiology about it, and like whatever we can do to get everyone being more active and being around people and training, I think that's a very good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, you got to get out of here.
Yeah.
It's almost 2:30.
Okay. I got to go pick up my daughter.
Dude, thanks for coming on. We appreciate your time. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And
thanks, dude.
This place is awesome.
Thanks. I didn't know you train at Absolute too.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there 4 years now, but yeah.